such a time as this.
And welcome to For Such a Time as This, the round table, Standing Firm in the Faith, Part 1. Standing Firm in the Faith, Part 1, Live Not by Lies. Before we get to the context, as always, I'm going to push our website, for such a time as this .today, for such a time as this .today. There you can sign up for our email, because a lot of people are saying that YouTube is shadow banning us. Yes, you're not getting some of the notifications. Just to let you all know, in the last, I want to say 3 months, we've more than quadrupled our subscription, but our videos are getting half of what we were getting 6 months ago. Yes, there's something going on. Go to for such a time as this .today, sign up for our email list, and so whenever we get new content, you will get an email with all the new content for that week. Go to for such a time as this .today. For such a time as this .today. Okay, here we go. Standing firm in the faith, live not by lies. And Prof. Abby will, in fact, lead us into discussion. What microphone are you, Abby?
One.
No, you're not one. You're one now. You're right. Okay, there you go. Okay. Go ahead.
Okay.
You're not one.
Am I on?
Hold on. Hold on, people. We gotta have
Just people. Just switch people.
Go ahead.
Okay. Can you
You're
hear me
two.
now?
Okay. All right. Go ahead. You're good. Go ahead, Abby.
All right. Okay, so I'm good, so we can start here? Okay. So if you were with us last week, we were talking about the Equality Act, which essentially, all right, President Biden has pledged to, when he was campaigning, he pledged to have this thing passed within the first 100 days. It looks like it's going to be a little longer than that. But it is still on the radar. There's a lot of support for this thing among, shall we say, activists, and we have so many activists now I think in our government, and that this is not going to. It won't be long before this comes up again. Anyway, the Equality Act, in essence, it does away with Christian education. It destroys Christian education. Its requirements are onerous. It is going to make it illegal under certain circumstances to obey God, is what it really comes down to. So we went through the details of that last week. So if you did not hear about that, go. We'll put the link under this when we're done, under this particular video, but you can go back and find it. Anyway, so we said this week that we were going to talk about what do you do in certain circumstances? Now that the foundations, Psalm 11:3 says, if the foundations are destroyed, what can the righteous do? How shall we now live if it's illegal to obey God under a lot of circumstances? And so I put together a short list of situations that we're just to talk about tonight and kind of hash things out. I'm sure that we'll have a variety of opinions on what it looks like to be faithful in these various circumstances. But first I wanted to say that I came across, Alexander Solzhenitsyn was a Soviet author, philosopher, and historian. He was a dissident, and he spent 8 years in a Russian gulag. I don't know if he was a Christian, but let me read a quote to you from him. Quote, over a half-century ago, while I was still a child, I recall hearing a number of old people offer the following explanation for the great disasters that had befallen Russia. They said, men have forgotten God. That is why all this happened. And since then I have spent well nigh 50 years working on the history of our revolution. In the process I have read hundreds of books, collected hundreds of personal testimonies, and have already contributed 8 volumes of my own toward the effort of clearing away the rubble left by that upheaval. But if I were asked today to formulate as concisely as possible the main cause of the ruinous revolution that swallowed up some 60 million of our people, I could not put it more accurately than to repeat, men have forgotten God. That's why all this happened. So I don't know if Solzhenitsyn was actually a fellow brother in Christ, but I do know that he was not an atheist. And just by what he's written here, I think it was an accurate diagnosis. And so he lived under totalitarianism. He wrote an essay in 1974 called Live Not by Lies. And basically, in the essay, so I thought this was I was kind of taken by this because it's sort of an approach to how to live in a world of lies, which isn't that what we're looking at right now? We were just talking about that.
Yeah, and before we go any further, I forgot. Hey, give me a thumbs up to make sure we're coming through loud and clear. If you are out there, please give us a thumbs up to let me know you are coming in clear.
Yeah, so as Christians, how do we live in a world full of lies where it's going to become illegal to obey God? But his modest proposal, we call it a little modest proposal, and I'll just say that because it's simple. It's not easy, but it is simple. He says, live not by lies. He says, live within the truth. He says, quote, it will not be an easy choice for a body, but it is the only one for a soul. And if you think about it, lies are to evil what gasoline is to a car. It's what electricity is to a light bulb. Evil cannot succeed without lies.
Well, that's why, to interject, that's why John 8 is so critical. Jesus, when fighting with the Pharisees, could have highlighted any other sin and called Satan the father of. But what was he called? The father of lies, because from that, everything else springs forth.
That's exactly right. And it started in the garden, and it has never stopped since. So, and of course, also, the positive aspect of that is being a Christian means being a witness to the truth in both word and deed. Jesus, when he was before Pilate, he said, you have said correctly that I am a king. For this I have been born, and for this I have come into the world, to testify to the truth. Everyone who is of the truth hears my voice.
One of my favorite verses.
Yes, I know that. So being a witness to the truth is our job description. Acts 1:8 says, but you shall receive power when the Holy Spirit has come upon you, and you shall be my witnesses, both in Jerusalem and in all Judea and Samaria, and even to the remotest part of the earth. And I do believe that's not just a witness to the gospel. That is a witness to truth, period. We have a whole book filled with truth of all kinds about all subjects. So it's just truth in general. And so Solzhenitsyn's suggestion to live not by lies actually it's perfectly biblical. And so I just wanted to share before we take a look at our situation, some of the things he wrote. He got specific about some pledges that he suggested people take. For instance, we are not to write, sign, or print in any way a single phrase which distorts the truth. Don't say anything that is not true in private or in public. Don't depict, foster, or broadcast a single idea which you can see is false or a distortion of the truth, whether it be in a painting, a sculpture, photography, technical science, or music. Do not raise your hand to vote for a proposal with which you do not sincerely sympathize, and vote neither openly nor secretly for a person who you consider unworthy of doubtful abilities. Do not allow yourself to be dragged to a meeting where there can be expected a forced or distorted discussion of a question. And isn't that all about diversity training now in corporations all over the place? Walk immediately out of a meeting, session, lecture, performance, or film showing if you hear the speaker tell lies or purvey ideological nonsense or shameless propaganda. And finally, he suggests don't describe I'm having trouble reading here. Subscribe to or buy a newspaper or magazine in which information is distorted and primary facts are concealed.
Well, you just got rid of all the media in America, not there.
Oh my gosh, that's a fact. Catholic author Rod Dreher writes, quote, "You have to live in a world of lies, but it's up to you whether that world lives in you," end quote. So I really like that. So anyway, situation number 1. I'll turn this over to the panel.
Okay.
You are an Illinois public school teacher, and the culturally responsive teaching and leading standards rule has been passed. By the way, that's coming up for a vote on the 16th or the 17th of this month, I believe. You will be required to, quote, embrace and encourage progressive viewpoints and perspectives to your students, including the concept of systemic oppression, white privilege, white fragility, and gender fluidity, or you will lose your license to teach. What do you do, panel?
Let me read it again for those out there. You are an Illinois public school teacher, and the culturally responsive teaching and leading standards rules has been passed. And that's legislation in Illinois that's up, right, Abby? All right. You will be required as a teacher or as an employee, or just all teachers?
It's specific to
Teachers.
there might be more in it than that.
Okay, you will be required to embrace and encourage progressive viewpoints and perspectives to your students, including the concept of systemic oppression, white privilege. That means white man bad, white people bad. All white people oppressors, white privilege, white fragility, and gender fluidity. Teachers are going to be required to encourage that boys are girls and girls are boys, or you will lose your license to teach. And since it is a state legislation coming forward, the state will yank your teacher's license, which is also given out. What will you do? So here, who's first? Is it easy one? Hold on. Oh, I think I got mixed up with it. Go ahead.
I don't think I would be able to be a teacher. I look at all the things, and I've said this before, it's like the masks are kind of your practice run, because if that was, you were talking about living lies, and we've talked about this with the mask before. Masks are being touted as being, if you don't wear a mask, you're endangering other people, which we know isn't true. There's so many studies. And to the point that we're getting to the point where now you're supposed to wear 2 masks. I mean, it's getting ridiculous, as if that's going to help. I would not be able to do it. I go, well, obviously God has a different route for me, and he is going to support me or sustain me someplace. And I remember having a talk with family members about this, and I go, where do we draw our line in the sand? I mean, if you don't know where that is now, when you get to it, you won't be able to do it. And I just, I think with some of my life experiences that I went through have made me have to think that way. So when I get to these things that are being forced on us, to me, that's not even a question. I'd be quitting my job.
This is a simple response, but it's not easy. Many of us have spent our entire lives in education. To a certain degree, some of us probably don't know what to do except what we're doing in terms of education. That being said, this is not complex. It is simple, because to acquiesce would mean that we're doing something that directly means that we are going against God. And I don't think that the Lord is going to accept the excuse, I need the money. I would, if I was in the situation, I think what I would try to do as soon as possible is try to get a consortium of like-minded teachers together, leave our current position and try to start some type of co-op where we could teach students the way they should be taught, which means I would have to quit to maintain my license. Now, I don't know how it works in the private sector of education. If you still need a license, I would. So you don't?
No.
Okay, well, okay, there you go. I mean, at a certain point, the way this is going, we're going to have to create an alternative, I almost want to say alternative reality, an alternative option for those of us students, teachers, administrators, and the like, where we can continue to educate our students the right way, because the way they are doing it is not the right way anymore. There's no question.
So let me ask a question, then the two that went first. Are you saying if you are a Christian, a Bible-believing Christian, then once this law passes, the Bible-believing Christian teacher in public schools in the state and the Socialist Republic of Illinois, Christian has to resign? Is that what's being said here?
The question, as I understood it, was, what would I do?
Correct. Yeah.
So that's what I would do. Am I going to go to my sister and brother and get in their face and say, you got to quit? I'm not ready to do that now, because there might be situations that will warrant them. They still have to make a decision. They have to make that decision. They're going to have to determine how they explain that away to the Father. Because of the relative swiftness of this decision, of this law getting passed, I don't know how long it's going to take them to apply it.
You're talking this year.
We're right in the middle of a hectic and complex school year as it is. But at any rate, there's going to have to be a plan to get out of that environment. Otherwise, they're going to have to teach transgenderism. Mm-hmm. So, yeah. Oh.
So, who else would like to go ahead?
Okay, so I'm going to say, live not by lies. A Christian cannot comply with this. There is no way, and be in obedience to the Lord. There's no way that you can teach systemic oppression, white privilege, white fragility, gender fluidity, and be obedient to God at the same time. And like you said, it's simple. It's not easy. It requires sacrifice.
But are you encouraging Christians to give up their job if this passes?
I wasn't going to directly answer that question. I was going to simply say 1 John 1:9 only goes so far. So for that person that says, well, I'll just go ahead and teach it and then confess and repent afterwards. I mean, okay, you get caught with your pants down one time, but you can't make this a habit. You're going to have to do something.
And I think within that bill, it's not only gender fluidity. I think homosexuality is in there also. And so you're going to be, as a teacher, you're going to have to teach little Johnny at 5 years old that Mark can have 2 mommies and 2 daddies.
Also in that is that you're going to go out and protest and be activists with the children. Right. So you are going to be teaching them to become activists. And I go, this is just insanity.
Once I saw that, you know what that means? Getting on the bus and going to the pride parades. That is what that means. With the naked men out there kissing and fondling each other. I'm not sure how you're going to square that with the Holy Spirit. And by the way, we're not going to be on YouTube much longer, but go ahead.
The other thing is, too, forget just the teachers. What parents are going to allow their children? I am shocked, but there has been a huge exodus from the schools this year because of this, the pandemic. I have said this, and I had this conversation 2 years ago with a family member, and I go, if I had children at this point, there is no way. In fact, I regret not having homeschooled my kids when we were having trouble in high school. I wish. I can't go back and undo that, but I wouldn't even put it past them this now.
Lisa Joy, you will be surprised at what parents in District 211 have put up with so far. Blows me away. Blows me away.
I'm going to say one more thing. I had struggles with my kids when we were in high school, and I remember having to make a very drastic move and made some choices that were very difficult with my child, went in to disenroll him. And I remember the ladies in the attendance office saying to me, "You are a great parent." And they were talking to me, and I thought, I didn't have that kind of encouragement from church friends. But I said, explained what I did, and they said, "We wish we had more parents that would do what you're doing." I thought, you know what? We need to open up those conversations with people, whether they're in the church or out of the church, because people don't know what's going on in their kids' classrooms. A lot of them don't.
I'll say this. First of all, Jack, blaze of legal media glory. I think I got that right. Please explain that to me. Yeah, I know. Go out in blaze of glory. Don't go quietly. I understand that. Media glory.
Blaze of legal
I know what he's talking about.
glory.
You think they're gonna cover you?
You said
They're not gonna cover you.
they're just going to eliminate you, but I think he might be addressing the fact you said something and very, very quickly said right after that, we won't be on YouTube long.
Okay.
I think.
Got it.
Jack, correct me if I'm wrong.
Got it. All right, Abby, go on to situation 2 if there's no more. What's the next one?
Okay, the next one is already happening. So the corporation you work for has instituted mandatory diversity training. It's clear that the homework you are required to do will expect you to positively affirm the details of critical race theory and gender diversity, which means homosexuality, gender fluidity, white privilege, everything we listed in situation number 1. And okay, and let me say too that one of the things, I'm not sure what the word for it is. Silence is generally not an option, because silence is seen as, within the context of critical race theory, as white fragility. Absolutely. They require positive affirmation. So you will be required to do homework. And this is happening now.
You know what? I want to see if there's any wiggle room in. And what did you say here? Affirm the details. Can you be a little bit more specific when you mean affirm?
The affirming of, for instance, okay, the details of critical race theory, which would be all whites are racist, white privilege, America is a white supremacist nation, systemic oppression, as they define it, it really exists. It's that kind of a thing.
So it would be more than just sitting in a classroom nodding your head.
Yeah.
You would have to affirm.
Yes. Now this will probably vary from company to company, because probably depending on who owns the company, but that's not going to be an option for everyone. They are going to have homework. They are going to be expected to
companies
to agree.
impose that?
To agree.
What companies have?
Oh, a lot of them.
What company? Name a company that has imposed that. Not to apply there, but.
Oh, I don't know. I would have to look it up, but I don't want to say, but I do know somebody very well who this is coming down the pike this spring.
That's
So
good question. The reason I say that's a good question is the closer a company is to the public, the higher the probability that they feel, quote unquote, morally obligated to try to put this into practice. The closer they are to being private, particularly if they are privately held and they're not accountable to the stock market, it's a higher probability that they might not be as aggressive to do this.
That is very true.
James, there's and Eric. Okay, something's wrong with me. That's what he said. To me, a bigger point that's missing is it's not necessarily a private company and supporting or serving the public. It's going to be companies that have government contracts. I'm not. Did I say just?
no, I'm just saying.
But that's going to be the biggest driver. Are companies that work and have government contracts. They will have to hire a vice president of diversity who will then start pumping out. And fortunate or unfortunate, my company does it through computer-based training. So it's all, I go online, yes, no, I answer the questions, watch the scenarios, what did they say? Here's the answer you told me that I should say, whatever, right? Not realizing that when I go out to the field, when I do the work I do, I don't know another way to say it, but nobody cares. We're there to do a job. We're there to be successful, to make money. Nobody cares about this stuff.
Here's what's different about, forgive me, this stuff. This is what's different about that. The powers that be will specifically go to companies and test it to make sure that they're
implementing
these new rules, laws, orders are being followed and implemented. So you might not have in the last 20 years seen a transgendered person ever. You will see one in some manner of context.
So are you saying that the Christian will have to leave any company that has corporate diversity training in which you will have to affirm the CRT or the sexual issue?
You know, I have a friend that's in the healthcare, and she does not want to take the flu shot. And she said, I dodged the bullet last year. They're going to come after me this year. And it's going to be like that, I think, for people with this diversity training. It's kind of like going to college and writing a paper and just writing it to agree with the professor to get a good grade, even though, kind of like what we've talked about with even some of the seminary things, you know that you disagree with what the professor is saying and you're just passing the class. But when you go through diversity training, you know, we would have a online, just like Chris was saying, for our, you know, like sexual stuff and what do you call it? You know, like I can't even think of the name, just appropriate business practices. And all of us had taken the test so many times, we all knew which question was kind of tricky and went, oh, remember this from last year. So we knew what to pass it. But when it gets to the point where they're in our face and they're saying, well, we took this training and you're not going by the rules, then it's going to, then, you know, your faith is going to be tested. And how does that play out? And it may be that you get scorned or you don't get the promotion or something. Maybe it's time to think then.
But again, so are we saying that Christians, because diversity training is spreading huge, are we saying that Christians need to bow out now?
No, I'm not, and I won't, and it doesn't matter. And if the consequences are that I get brought up and I get challenged and I get fired, so be it. I'm there to do a job. And if the company decides to change, I can either decide to quit or I can decide to stay, stand up for what I believe is right and true. No, I'm not going to argue. You know, it's I don't know any pastor, Christian, fellow Christian that tells me that I should go to work and proselytize all day long. I'm there to do a job, right? And it's understandable that hey, you got to keep that at bay when we're doing the work. Fair enough. I look at it the same way. I'm doing the work. If you're going to force me to think that way, well, you can't make me think that way. So they're going to have to take action, right? And what is that? If that is not persecution, bring it on. Because my Lord and Savior said, if I was persecuted and I am the master, it'll come to you too. So bring it on. And Christians, we shouldn't be afraid, and we shouldn't run away just because something is difficult or we don't agree with it. There's things I don't agree with, but okay, bring it on. Let's have the conversation. And if it results in persecution, I'm fired or I'm blacklisted or worse, I can't ever get another job. God will figure something out, right? But I as long as you don't fold and deny God or you become weak, and as long as you don't do those things, stand up and be a Christian, right? Loving and do your work. Whatever comes is going to come, and let it be that way.
You know, I'm going to repeat something I've said before. If we fail in the tests, the small tests, when we get to these big tests, it's going to be hard. And I remember my first job. We as a family didn't do things on Sundays because it just was the Lord's Day. And nowadays, I mean, no one even, that doesn't even raise an eyebrow. But I remember being in a office setting, and we were signing up for some kind of charitable thing, and I realized it was on Sunday, and I bowed out, and boy, did I get harassed. The whole, and another time I stood up and I said I wouldn't lie, and I got taken into the assistant manager's office, and I thought, woo! And those situations I look back at, and I remember watching, my favorite movie is Chariots of Fire, and then you think, Eric Liddell running and thinking that he's going for the Lord, and then getting all the way to the Olympics and not being able to run his race. And I go, if we're not faithful in the small things, when we get to the big things like this, we're going to collapse. So we better be practicing now.
No Name McGee, you said that the military is having a service-wide stand-down to address white supremacists and other such critical race theory stuff. Can you be more specific? You said it was announced today. Can you be a little bit more specific what you mean by a service-wide stand-down? Are you saying that our military is not active? Just let me know what you mean by that. And so let's move to the situation number 3.
Okay, so your teenage son is a talented athlete and on the school basketball team. A female who today identifies as male demands to undress in the locker room with him. If you choose to let your child play competitive sports, you will have a child in a sexually integrated facility.
Okay.
All right.
Can I just say something?
That's why you're here, Eric.
Wouldn't this be more applicable if my teenage child was a girl?
See, that's what I was going to say, but here's the thing. I was going to say that. Here's the thing. I'm not. It would be a lot more disturbing if it was the other way around. And some people say that may be sexist. I don't think it's sexist. And here's why. A quick story. I think I've shared this with you guys before. I was 18 in high school. My sister called. She was out the house. She was in college. She said, "What time did you come home?" I said, "I don't know." She said, "What's your curfew?" I said, "I don't have a curfew." She said, "You don't? Let me speak to your father." So I put my dad on the phone, like, what? I don't even know what the angle is. And she was like, "I was 17 years old. I came back from college because she was a year early." She said, "I had a curfew and I was in college. Your son isn't even in college and he doesn't have a curfew. That's sexist." And my dad said, "Ooh, that's a good question." But then he spoke to the other day and he says, "Look, here's the reality." He said, "You and 5 of your friends can go down on Bourbon Street, and a good size 6'6", 300-pound man can beat all 5 of y'all down and hurt y'all." He said, "James go out with 5 of his friends. I don't care if he's 7'6". He can't beat 5 of James' friends up on Bourbon Street." He said, "So I'm protecting my little girl." Is that sexist? I don't think so, per se. It's just the reality of it. So my son, with a confused girl, I would say stay away from. Don't dress near. It's the child's fault. I would have a problem with it, but like you said, if it's flipped around to whereas I have a daughter with a confused boy, who can overpower her, if they're in the locker room together one-on-one and can overpower her, that's a safety issue, you know what I'm saying? And so I would have a problem with it, but go ahead.
I'm going to say this. I'm going to answer the question. My teenage son would not undress in that locker room. They don't have to undress in locker rooms now. They can put on their sweats and go home. So first of all,
Except for swimming.
Okay.
But hold on, but not only that though. Here's the thing: if your son is in a locker room, he's by himself, and he can up and change. The girl can come in. Okay, she can come in. And so here's my thing. So do I punish my child because of some confused girl? You know what I'm saying? Go ahead.
Yeah, I just think I'm going to hear from my son, and he's going to say, "What's going on there?" And then he's going to go to his coach. So it's. I'm like, "You don't want to undress? Come on home."
That's pretty funky. I remember after. Put it this way, I went to an all-boys school, and after PE, some of us got lazy and said, "We ain't showering, we're going to class." After about 2 days of that, the science teacher spoke to the PE teacher, said, "Them boys can't come to class no more like that. I can't breathe in class. Them boys got to take a shower. They got to take a shower before they come." You know what I'm saying?
But typically, if they're on the team, the practice is either, well, no, the practice actually could be before school starts. But I was going to say typically it's after school is out. So
Has this kind of situation happened? Because I see it the opposite way a lot.
Go ahead.
We see it. Well, we see a dude that's in the girls' locker room. I mean, that's always been the situation, and either side is so wrong. It is so wrong that I probably would pull my kid either way out of it. I wouldn't even let them be. I wouldn't put my children in that situation. Now, there have been that kind of situation in the high school when my daughter was in a freshman, and they were very, it wasn't a locker room situation, it was a homosexual situation. And the upperclassmen knew how to embarrass the younger ones. And the situation when my daughter came home and told me, it was a situation at like homecoming or something, and an upperclassman kind of went over and kissed one of the girls on the cheek and said, "Oh, I'm sorry, I thought you were my girlfriend," and totally embarrassed these freshman girls that didn't know, they did it purposely. And I go, so there's those kind of situations. Forget about the locker room. I wouldn't be letting my kids go to the public high school. It's just so. I mean, seriously, when we're talking about all this, are we protecting our kids You know, I think about when I was in high school, if my mom knew all the things that had happened to me junior high and high school, she probably wouldn't let me go to public. But there was more protection for us back then, too.
But here's the question, though. You say you would pull your kid from that situation. If your kid is very talented, are you not punishing him in that situation because of a confused girl and a confused administration?
Well, it's my understanding that there are travel teams and there are other places, outlets for them to play. If they're that talented, they could. But here's my thing. Is sports more important? Is popularity more important than doing the right thing? No. Sorry.
I hear what you're saying, the right thing, but are you punishing your kid? I mean, do you see what I'm saying? Are you punishing your kid
By allowing them to be in a locker room with a child that is confused?
That's a school.
Yeah.
I get it, but you know what? Again,
Okay.
here's the difference of things. So do we retreat? If there's a safety issue, but
address the issue. But right now, we're on a slippery slope and we're losing. So my question is, what would you do?
okay, here's what I'll tell you. If my son is a talented basketball player and you got a confused girl with a confused administration, I'm saying I would tell my son to remove himself as best from the vicinity of that girl. But do I pull my kid off the team who's going for a college scholarship for basketball because of this confused girl and this confused administration? So now my son, I pull him off the team and he's hurt? No. I would tell my son, if she's over there, you go over there, because it's not a safety issue. And I would raise holy Hades in the school as best as possible. But at that point, if I pull my son out of the situation or pull my son off the team, I'm punishing my son because of the transgender confusion in there. Does that make sense?
I agree with you 100%. However, I believe that this issue is going to be pushed over and above, and I mean this when I say this, because most coaches, high school and above, from an educational standpoint, part of their compensation is winning. And I think because of the evilness of this will supersede that, to the point that, given your example, they will make sure that that girl is able to dress near your child. I see that coming. Not right now, but I see it coming.
Let me explain this. You always hear it the opposite way right now. You hear it with boys going in girls' locker rooms, but do you
211, we had this. Oh, yeah.
Wait, hold on. Go ahead, Abby. Go ahead, Abby.
I was just going to say that in our local district, 211 here, we had a girl in the boys' locker room last time around when this came up again.
Look on the comments.
I saw it. But so a girl was in a boys' locker room. Was it repeatedly?
Oh, yeah.
Go ahead.
She identified as a boy.
Good. Mm-hmm. So here's where. Wait, hold on.
Okay.
So here's the thing. The danger is the opposite way around. It's not with that per se physically. Go ahead, Chris.
Vanderbilt had a young lady come out and kick field goals and kickoffs, and she's still kind of part of the team. She did not go into the locker room. She was not allowed to go into the locker room. She went to the girls' side and showered and did her thing. Now, she was with the team at halftime during that first game because she was trying to cheer them on. But when it ended and it was time to go and take showers and get dressed, no, you're off over there. Boys are over here.
But she wasn't claiming to be a transgender. And here's go ahead.
The point would be, and I agree with you, James, am I going to punish my son when I have an opportunity to teach him, A, the evils and wickedness of the world? I have an opportunity for him to, son, there's a girl who wants to be in the boys' locker room, and not all the boys are going to be Christians or manly. I expect you to stand up on the team. I expect you to try to protect her. Even if she's confused and thinks she's a boy, make sure that the rest of the team doesn't treat her differently because she...
Here's my thing. Here's my thing, Chris. You're not going to stop that. And here's my thing. I wouldn't necessarily tell my son to protect delusions. There's such thing.
No.
Go ahead.
Not what I'm saying. That is not what I'm saying. Protect delusions. A girl dressed as a boy going into especially in an athletic locker room, football, high school football. Jeremiah is in high school, and he's going to the University of Iowa. How charged is that?
That's
girl in that situation.
Mm-hmm. That's my point here, and I'm saying going the opposite way. Do you remember? Listen, boys' locker rooms will take care of themselves for the most part. Oh, yeah. And here's Exhibit A. The NFL, and there's a reason why I think society hates the NFL. It's the one club that they can't play the transgender game with. They put the one gay man in there. Remember Michael Sam? Mm-hmm. The one guy from Miami said, y'all can do that in L.A. You better not do it here in Miami, the Dolphins here. He was suspended for 2 weeks. But when was the next gay guy put in an NFL locker room? Hasn't happened. Hasn't happened because you want to know why? Michael Sam gave an interview. He said, I would have to wait until all of the other guys showered before I got in. He was never part of the team. And he's out of football now. And they said, well, he couldn't play. He was the co-defensive player of the SEC his senior year. Mm-hmm. One of the best conferences. Don't tell me the boy couldn't play. He couldn't be on the team. So when we go back with women, a woman in a boys, let's say, football locker room, the only danger there is her. She's the only one in danger if she wants to walk into that locker room. You flip it on the opposite side. You get a boy in a track locker room with girls. That's dangerous. That is dangerous.
I'm not.
I know.
You know, my point was, there's probably two major sports, football and basketball, where I don't see a girl identifying as a boy even making the team. Can't do it. Yeah. They'll be forced onto it. And I don't see him getting out there until the team is 30 points ahead to play, just because there are huge physical differences in high school in those two physical sports. Baseball is another one. I don't think you'll ever see a girl, a young woman claiming to be a boy playing baseball in high school and higher. I don't think you'll ever see it.
Yes, you will. The first time a girl can throw a 95-mile-an-hour fastball. that won't happen. But go ahead. You're right. Go ahead, Abby. We're running along here. So here's what I was saying. Just to wrap up too. I think Christians should raise holy Hades in the school when they do this. Yep. But at some point, I don't want to punish my child. Boy, and how do you do that? Do you ask for your son to have a separate changing room? It's definitely not okay. But I don't want to punish my child for the delusions of others. And then
the whole thing about team, one of the most important aspects of the team is the locker room. You get bonded as a team in the locker room. So given this situation, that would be one of my least, I'm not going to say anything else. That would be one of my least favorite options, is to remove him out of that environment. because of that person. Now, that being said, what is, and I forgive me for switching back to the other scenario. All of the advances that women have made over the decades in terms of equality in sports, and in one fell swoop, because a dude determines he wants to be a girl without.
It's the stupid administrations that gave into the. Go ahead. You're right.
Either way, now my child, my female child, cannot pursue her goal of athletics because a guy's in the way. That is an outrage, and I mean it.
Okay, so maybe we can wrap it up for tonight and save this last one for next time, because this was the one that you and I argued about, Pastor James.
Go ahead. We can do that.
Are you sure?
Yeah, we'll try.
All right, then. Here we go. You are eating lunch with several colleagues from work, and the topic of the Black Lives Matter movement and the book White Fragility comes up in conversation. It's clear that they enthusiastically support these things, and they turn to you for an opinion.
Right.
Do you give it?
Yep.
At work?
Go.
At work.
Go, Abby.
Oh, you want my answer?
Yeah.
If they ask me for an opinion, yes, I tell the truth. I give it. That's not what we argued about. So let's see what.
Well, explain what we argued about, because I don't remember. I thought you said no.
Let's just answer
Okay.
the question.
Okay.
If asked for an opinion, do you tell the truth? You know what?
I'm of the strong opinion that. Why are you laughing? I'm the strong opinion that, you know what, my life, and people usually, even the people that work with me, know who I am, know what I believe, without me even saying some things. And it was interesting. It wasn't this subject at all, but one of the people that I had worked with for many years and had actually been one of my supervisors, they were having a discussion about something, and then they all of a sudden said, "What do you think, Lisa Joy?" And he really sincerely wanted to know, and I had to sit and think about how I was going to say, because it wasn't a huge controversy, but I have found that a lot of times I ask questions of them before I give my statements. Why would you think that way? Why? Okay, what is it that you'd think? So I'd probably ask a lot more questions, because it's more about the relationship you have with these people, and it is about telling the truth. But if you can mix both of them, that's best.
Let me ask some clarifications. Chloe, yes, it's definitely happening. We know boys go on girls' teams. Have you seen on the high school level of youth, girls going on boys' teams? And Campbell, want to ask a question here. I'll come back to that. Somebody else want to give their opinion. All right, here's what I say. If I remember now, you're right, Abby. I remember now. Yes, if someone asks you a question, you always, if you're going to answer, you always answer truthfully. Absolutely. The disagreement, and here's we're going to swing it around because we're running out of time. The disagreement was this: if they are talking freely at lunch, then I should talk freely at lunch. Otherwise, I am giving them a platform that I myself, when given the same platform, chooses silence. And at that point, they win. And I think that's where we disagreed upon, right?
We do.
Wait, hold on. Go ahead.
And we do disagree. I don't, because this kind of stuff gets back to HR, and HR is like the Gestapo in corporations. And I don't need to offer myself necessarily up on a platter over a conversation at lunch. And I don't think that is in any way disobedient to God.
But if others are freely talking on a free platform and I choose not to talk, then at some point I've ceded ground to them. Go ahead, Eric.
I I disagree with that.
Go, Eric.
Oh, I agree with Abby on
Go ahead.
being very careful about what you say because it will go back to HR. My issue is, though, my face communicates things I might not say. And I feel so strongly about this issue, I can say I don't have an opinion and my nose will be getting big. So I'm going to have to say something. And I don't care if it goes back to HR. But that is on touchy subjects, that is a concern.
I disagree. It's not giving up ground. If you don't say anything.
Okay. Now watch this. Watch this. Hold on. Watch this.
Not agreeing with their position.
Wait. You talk. Go ahead.
It's open conversation people are having at lunch if they want to, and they ask me what I think, and I'm, I don't care to weigh into that. That's not giving up anything, and that's not letting them win. It's not a battle. We're not at war.
So here's my thing. Here's my thing. If you are among friends and the topic comes up and you speak freely, good. But if you're at lunch and freely and they don't talk, watch this. And what's your motivation in being quiet? What is your motivation in being quiet? Because if you were among friends, you would talk. Now you're among enemies, you're quiet. The motivation of you keeping your mouth closed is fear. That's what it is. Okay, then tell me what the other one is then. Go ahead.
I don't want to weigh in. 2 weeks ago, I sat here with y'all, and I didn't say boo the whole podcast.
You're
and
not.
I love you guys to death.
Chris, you're not mine. Go ahead.
Oh, yeah.
I lost my thought. I'm sorry.
I'm going to repeat what we usually use for this ministry. There is no such thing as a silent witness. And there have been, I want to tell you, I'm going to tell a story. This is a true story. I worked my first job in the local library. And I want you to know, I got jabbed and razzed and just completely beat up by other people that I worked with because of my faith. And they were, they'd come back, and each one of them I had a good relationship with. But if they got in a group, I got the brunt of it. And there was a girl that I worked with. She will remain nameless. She was very quiet, very shy. I always felt for her. And I got to know her like towards the end of her tenure there to find out that she had she was a Christian. She went to a church. She invited me to come to her church. And not only did she criticize me for something like maybe the music I listened to, she never spoke up. She never said anything. And when I found out she was a believer and she had stood there when they all chewed me out, I thought, how would I even have known that you were a believer? And you're my friend. She wasn't a friend. In fact, I felt more in tune with some of the people that were against me because at least they were honest to my face. She hadn't been. And I thought, I don't want to be that kind of Christian. I always want to be, and you don't have to be abrasive, but.
And I will say that I think you're right about that, Lisa Joy. But I think that's a different subject matter. Yes, because Lisa Joy was getting picked on because she was a believer.
I stood up for things.
And she stood up for things, and the other girl, instead of supporting her and being a witness as well about things of God, chose silence.
How's that any different?
I don't think that.
Let me ask you a question.
No, and this is if they're not asking your opinion about white fragility and all and Black Lives Matter. I don't think it's incumbent upon you to.
Okay, so here's my question. Is it wrong to not speak up for Christ when the motivation is fear? Does that make sense? And so if you're saying that it's not fear, then you tell me why else are you keeping silent in that situation? Go ahead, Eric. You want to say something right quick?
If the issue, simply put, is Christ, I believe that I have to stand up. I have to confess. I literally, if it's a touchy subject, what I've got to remember and what we have to input in this conversation is the people we sit at lunch with are not necessarily our friends. Leave that company.
We know that.
Okay, well, leave that company. You'll figure out who your friends are.
We know that.
So I might need to keep my mouth shut because I don't know. I know you, but I don't know you. So
So explain to me what would be the motivation if you talk football, basketball, you're all into it. You talk baseball, you're all into it. Now you go to critical race theory, they talk and you go silent. You tell me what is the motivation then at that point?
Sir, I didn't say that.
No, I'm just saying given
That subject is so serious to me, I would have to open my mouth. That's. But there are other subjects, that I would prefer to keep my mouth shut.
But we're talking about when you're at work and they're talking about critical race theory or white or something along those lines, transgenderism, you keeping your mouth closed.
No, I'm not keeping my mouth shut.
Okay.
Oh, I'm closed.
Go ahead.
Depends on how I feel that at that moment. It's not fear. I just don't want to talk about it. Those are politically charged topics.
Right.
They are not conversations about Christ. I've stood up. I've had the guy that I work with said, we got this guy, Peter, QA guy, walking around, and he's got John 3:16 on them. But what does that even mean? I stood up, and in front of God and country, I said John 3:16, and I quoted the verse. Mm-hmm. And I saw my friend look at me and just start, oh, yeah, okay, yeah. And I said, no, I'm going to finish, and I'm going to tell you what it means and why you need to know it. Mm-hmm. So in that, when it comes to the truth of God, right, but a politically charged conversation about Black Lives Matter.
No, so I'm not talking about if you.
I don't feel a sense of obligation that I always have to stand up and say something when I'm asked. I can say, I don't feel like talking about it today.
That wasn't the scenario described. If you have a sour stomach, if you got a sore throat, that's not what we're talking about. We're saying that if, because of fear getting back to HR, or fear of repercussions of what you say, if you keep your mouth closed because of that. So if you don't feel well that day, that's not the scenario. The scenario is, do you keep your mouth closed because you fear it gets back to HR, or you fear the repercussions of what you're going to say? That was the specific scenario. Does that make sense? Yeah. So yeah, I'm not talking about if you feel bad that day. Ain't nobody talking about that. Are you going to do it because of the fear of the repercussions? I say that's when it's wrong, and then we got to close it up because I said we're going to keep it short, so we got to hurry and keep it close.
I don't know because I'm not afraid when I want to voice my opinion. I'm not afraid to let it out, so I've never been afraid of HR. Now, the words that I use, or maybe the emotions, I want to keep in check. So, for example, and if I could throw this out real quick, I had a guy had to go up to the office, and he had to let go of an employee because they had a conversation about abortion, and at one point, the guy who was pro-abortion was saying, I'm for it. The other one called him baby killer, and just kept razzling him, calling him a baby killer. Is that loving, uplifting speech that we're supposed to use when we speak with each other? Ended up going to HR, and he got fired because of it.
I think that the wisdom in this is being led by the Holy Spirit. Because there are some situations, even in a mixed group, there are some mixed groups in lunch that I would not stand up. If I was asked my opinion, I would tell it. But I'm just saying there are certain situations that it would not be good to mix with the people who are there. I'd be better off stating my facts, backing out and because I'd have relationships with each one of those people. And I've gone into situations where I know as a Christian, we are going to be asked things, we're going to be asked our opinion, we're going to be put on the spot, and I pray at the time that God gives me the words that I need to say, seasoned for the moment, not abrasive, but very confident in what I think God wants me to say. So maybe that would be the way we can.
Let me read some comments real quick on the thing. Campbell says, how do we live with the courage to rely on the Holy Spirit to give you the words for the moment. Jack says critical race theory is a competing religion and swallowing up churches. It is directly related, and that's to the thing which says, you know, if it's about Christ, I'll talk about it, but if it's critical race theory of Black Lives Matters, I won't do it. Jack says, no, that is dealing with the gospel. That is dealing with God's truth. That's just his comment. And then Campbell says this, one of the most often repeated phrases in the Bible is fear not. Perhaps a study is in order. Last words as we close out. Any last comments? Any last words? Going once.
This is good.
Going. Go ahead, Eric. Go.
No, this was good stuff because we don't talk about situational ethics or things of that nature as much as we could, as much as we should, particularly during this time.
Yeah. And with the seemingly the imminent appointment of the reality czar, we're going to have a lot more conversations and situations, real life situations, to deal with. One last word. Go ahead. Go.
I think Lisa Joy articulated what I was really trying to say is, I don't fear, but I pray that I get that when I do speak up, that the Spirit gives me the words to share lovingly what I think, but to stand firm. That doesn't mean that I'm afraid to not say something if I don't want to.
Campbell asked me to announce the next chat. The next chat will be part 2 of what you heard tonight. It will be part 2, right? It will be part 2 of what you said before we. So next week, Campbell, we'll discuss this and other situations. Before I leave, go to for such a time as this .today. For such a time as this .today. There you can sign up for our email. So when we are kicked off of Facebook, we can stay in close contact with you. Until that time, God bless. Hit the wrong button. Let's try that again. Until next time, God bless.
For such a time as this.